Hey guys, Dib the Awesome here to give you yet another Monster Legends guide. We talk about monsters' moves, rune sets, partners, all that jazz. Today we are taking a look at Mr. Rivera, or Skull Rivera. Really cool monster is the Father of Demise. That's right, it is a Familia monster in the family book, home to a lot of popular monsters. I'd say Families is one of the better books in the game because it has access to quite a few strong picks like Cryotan, like the Mountain Monsters, the Mountain Brothers, the Galante family. You got Toymaster for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know why Toymaster. Is it because like Sarah and stuff? I think it's because the toys are apparently related. They're apparently family. Uh, Rocks and Cox. That whole thing. That whole spiel. We're getting a lot of family monsters. I don't know who Prince Charmless is related to. I guess it's Bella Ball. I don't know. Moral of the story is I don't know. He's just in here. Why is he in here? I don't get that. I don't get that at all. But he's just in here. But as you can see here, he's available in a lot of books. It wouldn't be a bad idea to actually rank this guy up, because he can actually be used one of two ways. You have two main routes you may choose. I think one of the routes is going to be the more stereotypical popular one, but there's going to be an extra route. If you do rank this guy up, he can actually go another route, or as I like to call it, the Dib Discovery path route. Because I kind of figured that this move set would be pretty huge. We're going to get to it later. But just so you guys know, I took the time to look over this monster. You guys asked me a lot to do a guide on this. So I looked it over. I think there's another way to play him beyond the player style that people will probably play him. So this is going to be a really interesting guide. So just sit tight and listen to the good old sagely competitive advice of Dib the Awesome. So power, 3,432, not the highest power in the game, a little bit below the gospel power, but I think 3,400 range is relatively nice. It's not where we want it to be, at least in terms of minimum base power, but it's good enough. If you rank this guy up, the power does get better, and especially if you're running like 2 level 10 strength runes, you'll start seeing some stuff. It's weird that you're hearing damage from me. Plot twist: it has the dib route has is a damage route, but again, we'll get to that later, as it'll make sense later. So just so you know, the power right now, while it isn't the highest, it is manageable. It is very much so manageable. Life 40,112. This monster is tanky. As far as I'm concerned, it's the tankiest light monster in the game. Just a brick. It's just a boys. It's just a rock. It can sponge damage. It's just like a living coaster. And you'll see later on in its kit, it has quite a few things that can keep it from avoided from damage. It has a lot of things that avoid damage or just have the probability of the enemy missing. Just a bunch of stuff. It has a lot of weird things. This monster is really, really, really weird. It's a really, really weird tank. But it excels in a lot of things. It goes in a lot of situations, and it's very misleading. It's a very misleading tank. They're starting to release a lot of monsters that are misleading, but given some situations and or tactics, they can excel in them. I'm going to be mentioning Wolfgang at some point. It's the past monster that I did a guide on. It was actually the one right after, before this one. So it's just they just got one skill in common, or at least and we'll talk to that in a bit. But just so you know, this is a really great life for a light tank at level 100, or just any tank at 100 with 40k life. That's very, very awesome in a game where damage is the man. Just being able to sponge damage is relatively nice. It is pretty good. This might actually be really, really irrelevant if you don't build around it later on. But just so you know right now, 40k life is astronomically amazing. I just mean when you run a certain scale, but for the most part, this is a really good life. Very good life. Speed 3,311. This monster is slow as balls. This monster is just like slow. Like that hunchback ain't no for show. He is actually really slow because of it. Like 3,311. We haven't seen a speed like this in quite some time. It's actually a pretty not common speed to see nowadays. It's just kind of slow. Don't expect this thing to go first over other damage dealers if you do decide to run it as your main damage dealer. Excuse me, as your main damage dealer. Um, but yeah, in terms of just tanks, this isn't surprising. It's not surprising for a tank to be this slow. Though it isn't as slow as old day tanks. Old day tanks were like in the 2000 range, and it was just kind of terrible. So for it to have decent speed like that, it's not too bad a speed. I guess I kind of milked it, but for the most part, just in terms of what we've been getting lately, this is really slow. uh, the trait, Hardened. This is a trolley trait. It's one of the better traits in the game, and it's a tilty trait. People are tilted when this procs because you get 20% less accuracy to get hit by a deny. So this is really, really good. You got a chance to avoid freezing, you get a chance to avoid stunning, you get a chance to avoid possession. I will say possessing this man might not be all too good depending on the route the player takes. If you go my route, it doesn't care too much. The other one, it might care a lot. It might care. It might be bothered a tad. It might be bothered by it. I don't think it'd like it. But if you're running my build, it's not gonna care. It won't care. Odds are it probably won't care. The relics for this man is the amulet slot and the shield slot. Now there's actually quite a few new shield relics we got added to the game, or just like maybe two, right? Yeah, there's two relics that got into the game. I believe one of them was healing, right? We got... Yeah, when a turn starts, if any allies below 25% life, they heal the target by 23,510. This is really good if you're living by a limb. This is really good if someone's just near death. So pretty close to DOT death range. I can find this pretty convenient, but it's very situational convenience. So you can have the option of running that. I think you might as well. I think any of the gold, like just any of the shield relics in general at the moment aren't worth running. If you also have the Hiron's shield, this gives you armor and also damages the enemy with 20k. This adds damage to his utility. I will say this is a really rare shield. If you do wind up getting Hiron's shield, run it with the build I'm going to tell you guys today, and you'll do a lot of damage. The amulet, you have quite a few options. Specifically, you could run the supercharge amulet. I will say supercharge amulet's the best thing you can run on him. With my build specifically, we haven't gotten to what my build is yet. It's a damage dealer, but you'll understand later. I think it's good for the main build anyway too, like for the extra turn. You might not actually have to run it for the main community build. But you have the option to. I don't think you need it at that point, but you're probably going to run a stamina rune on it. I recommend Rainbow Rune build, if anything, for the main build. But again, we're getting to that. You have the option of running Healing Amulet or the Supercharge Amulet. Supercharge Amulet gives you at max 135 maximum stamina at the beginning of the game. It's really good. It's a really good relic. So now we're going to get to Ultimate now. The Ultimate resurrects all allies by 100% life, gives an extra turn to itself. This is really good. Or like it gives an extra turn to all allies. I don't know if it gives himself an extra turn. If it gives himself an extra turn, that's really good. Because then you can go into other plays with Rivera. But just giving an extra turn to your allies that are just bringing back from the dead is really good. This is his only resurrection skill, and it's interesting that another tank has gotten yet another res skill. I'm just telling you guys, the meta just seems to want res monsters that can stay alive quite a bit by either doing a bunch of random miss effects or just healing, what have you, and just being out there really, really long time just to bring back the people you've killed. There's really no point to killing people. But this is just a skill that does that. I will say if you do wind up getting ult at some point with Rivera, that is huge. That is just downright game breaking. You will probably win with a full res set. Because whenever you're brought back from the dead, you get all your stamina and cooldowns are deactivated. That's just how resing works. And this is a really, really great alt. In terms of a supportive standpoint, it's really good. Offensively, it can't be really used offensively because it does no damage. But the people you bring back can do damage, so that just kind of substitute for it. I think this is a phenomenal ultimate, if not one of the best ultimates in the game. Because if you're in a really bad situation, you get this, you just kind of win. You just kind of win. You kind of get your 3 coins. This is a very, very, very good war skill. It's very good in war if you do wind up getting this. Not so convenient if he himself dies. If he's the one that's dying, this doesn't do you any good. So as long as the condition that the allies are dying and you're not, you can just bring them back. No problemo. Bring them back, free guaranteed. The first skill we're just going to talk about 2 skills in skill groups 1 at the moment. I say this was similar to Wolfgang. I haven't got to that point at the moment, but for just my build, like for my build path, these 2 kills might be of relevance to you, or it might be interesting to hear. Orote le Blindio. This is a single target blind skill, 24 stamina, spammable. It costs no cooldown, and it's a spammable blind. It's not even 50%. It is pretty much guaranteed. It's a normal blind in skill groups 1, and it also has a normal daze. We don't run the daze though, my boys. Don't run the daze. Run the blind. The blind's better because you have a 50% chance of missing. Like the enemy has a 50% chance of missing. This is a good skill. This lets you blind. This doesn't do a whole lot of damage, but it's good for a later skill. This is one of the skills you run for the damage, and this might be a maybe skill. You might want to run this skill. Atalakai Bien Cheeto. This is an AoE skill that applies Anticipation Hater to itself, giving it triple damage. I will say this guy is really good in Faraday matchups. I know that's crazy to say. He is just kind of good with those though. However, you have the trait disabled. I will say you're gonna have to do another skill in skill groups 2. You'd have to trait disable first, but if you manage to trait disable and then go for the Cheeto, you're gonna do a lot of damage and probably kill the enemy Faraday. I will say this is an optional skill. One turn cooldown. This is an optional skill to run. I don't think this was intentional in terms of like before beginning this video. I did say I looked this thing over. I kind of looked over this skill. I didn't know it was an AoE, but it is an AoE. It's a special base skill. As far as I'm concerned, this is only special base damage skill. If you're running like double damage, this is a 50 damage AoE. So basically a normal AoE with when you double damage. That doesn't seem too good, but hey, again, there's a skill later on that kind of gives it more options, and it seems damage is more viable. Looking at these base numbers, it's crazy it's crazy for me to say there is a damage path to this besides the main path that most people would go. I will say it's acceptable. I will say you can run it. It does work. Evasion Kalaka. This is a evasion skill that applies evasion to itself for 2 turns. It's a self skill, 18 stamina, 3 turn cooldown. So 2 of the 3 turns of the cooldown, you're just evading all forms of damage. You're not going to take any damage for 2 turns. This is very similar to the last monster, Wolfgang, who got a AoE damaging and evasion. I think the catch with this is honestly the only real difference between this evasion and the other evasion is this guy doesn't have a better harden trait. This guy has a 20% less chance. Wolfgang had a 35% less chance to get hit by a status effect because he had the tough trait. And this thing also doesn't do any damage. I don't think people mind that though. Because the evasion lasting for 2 turns is just real good. Just to evade all forms of damage for 2 turns is nice. And it's not only is it a turn less, the stamina cost is better, and you can run another skill that kind of lowers the cooldown of the skill, or just like it gets down at the same time. So it doesn't really matter, but it ensures that two of the turns you're waiting for. Of the 3 turns you're waiting for the other skill you're going to use, it just ensures that you can do it again. That's basically what it does, and you just avoid all damage and status effects. It's just relatively nice. Just so you know, this is a good skill. I'd recommend this in both paths that I'd have you go. The main one and or my damage one. I do have a damage build for this man. Anticipation hater. This is basically just gives anticipation hater to a target. I don't really like in all honesty, I don't really like any. I don't really like this. I think that's kind of dumb to actually use this against anticipation monster. I said in the beginning this thing is kind of good at anticipation fights because of anticipation hater, but I feel like it just kind of conflicts with its kit. I don't think it's a good idea. And I think you should just might as well run this AoE right here. If you want to do the whole anticipation here, if you want to make this a counter to anticipation monsters, just run this skill and then probably trait disabled. I'd probably combo this into anticipation trader or anticipation hater, or just do trait disabled first. Well, then this kind of makes the hater dead. I'm sorry. Just so you know, this setup is weird. I don't think I'd ever use this, like ever. I don't think this is a good Rivera skill. Anticipation monsters aren't that hard to kill. I'd say the hardest one being Necromancer, but beyond that, Faraday's relatively easy to kill since for the most part people just run him 2 damage and a speed. I will say the Rainbow Ruined Faradays are a tad bit harder to kill, but for the most part, I don't think you need Anticipation Hater ever. It just seems like a really situational skill. It's kind of a dead skill too. It doesn't really have that much of a radius. Like Mechanical Hater, for example, has so many. It's a specific genre of things. It's not just a specific trait or a specific status effect. I think the book haters are just more useful than just any like specific trait or status effect hater. It doesn't seem much of a point to do so, unless you like igneous. If you're igneous, you're completely fine on that. But anything else really, in terms of non-book related haters, it's just not worth your time. It is not. So just don't run it. Don't run it. You might want you may or may not run this skill simply because again, just something in skill groups 3. Abiora Mr. Faraday. This is a 30 damage, 2 turn cooldown, 23 stamina skill that applies trait disabled. This is a support skill. You probably will run this in the support set. I'll recommend you. Basically, what trait disable does, it just disables a trait. So if something was immune to possession, use this skill. Bam, they're no longer immune to possession. The problem with this, I really wish this was an AoE. This would be so much better on an AoE scaling, but it's not. It's single target and doesn't do any deny or anything in the process. I wish it did, but it doesn't. It's a very vanilla trait disabled, but hey, it's a trait disabled. You don't know when it's going to come in handy, especially with all these War Masters walking around nowadays. I will say, since he is a tank, I think he can take advantage of this. If he was like a damage dealer, not so much, because this has no damage value out of it. But since he's a tank, lives relatively long, and I think it's good for if you're going for like a DOT comp. Let's say you are going for a stall comp, which I think that's the best team for it. You do trait disabled, slap some deny. Probably like a. If it would be weird if you could actually bring L-Canine and this together at once, but I feel like L-Canine's a good partner or example. Use this on anything that has mountain. I think L-Canine's in family too, isn't he? Yeah, okay, so he is. So like if you do run the family, I suppose you couldn't run both. You couldn't really run both in that situation, but I think I've seen double books before, haven't I? I don't really know. But if you're in family and for some reason just double family, bring an LK9, make that Agursus no longer immune to stun that boy, and you get DOT out of it. You get to do things. This just gives your denier the opportunity to probably deny the enemy denier. Like usually if you're trying to counter deny the deny, and for some reason that deny is immune to your deny, bam, trait disable it, and you can control that monster with the thing you brought. Buena Onda Esta skill. I'm sorry if I'm just butchering Spanish right now. But this gives you an evasion and double damage. I will say this was what I was gonna have you run this in the damage set. You can also run this in the support set too. This applies evasion and double damage to one ally, so you avoid all forms of damage until your next turn, and you get double damage out of it. This is pretty good. This is pretty good. However, in terms of, and I'm saying in terms of if he were to give this to himself with one of his after doing one of his skills or just getting done with several skills actually, because we're almost to that. We're almost to that. It's good for Rivera himself because it lets him either set up for the beginning of that combo or at the end to do more damage. I think you would set this up at the beginning of your, like after you've done your big move. I will say, like again with my build, there's a big move. We're about to get to that. We're about to get to that. I think you use this at the beginning, get the double damage benefit, and then just kind of do your double damage, do your increased damage with the other two skills, and knock out anything that's not light. essentially, anything that's not light. Los Extra Turnos. This is this guy has two. All right, this guy has two big, huge skills, and depending on what you go, you run either. Or Los Extra Turnos gives 2 extra turns to one ally and removes all positive effects. This is 100% drain to itself. And it requires a cooldown of 8 turns. So if you get cooldowns activated, this skill is dead. There is no excuses, it's just dead. So if you're running something like Bowtie and Copperbeard, I will say this is something that's probably a pairing you want to run it with. So it assures you that you actually can do this again. So you can actually use this skill. In case you get cooldowns they activate, like on a Timeron or something. If you get cooldown to activate Timeron or Chrysandri, what have you, Dungeon Master, is a good idea to bring something that gives, removes all cooldowns. They're even faster than Rivera too. So if that does happen, their Bowtie will go first, and you'll be able to do your plays, or unless you'll be able to do double turn plays again. Now this skill seems really, really pointless in war. I will say for the most part it is. But here's a huge but. It is competitively viable. It is a competitively good skill with specific monsters. Now, a lot of skills in the game don't seem like a lot of sense to run because of like a huge consequence. A lot of the times that consequence can be removed depending on what you apply it to. For this skill in particular, if you apply it to a reviver, you can just bring back Rivera, and then you just get another turn. It basically gives anyone on your team an extra turn, and this is basically a reviver's reviver extra turn skill. You give this to a reviver, they bring back Rivera. I will say, Undertaker's an alright one to use this on. You can use Undertaker to bring back Rivera. But there's better. I think you just use Sammy. Just use Samuel. I feel like that's such a better option. It would even increase his damage. I will say, if you run Sammy, then this does more damage, because Sammy applies the special weakness. If not, that's probably a really good idea. And in fact, it gives you more AoE damage. Do that. Do that for the damage route. No, this gives you extra turns. It gives you 2 extra turns. It costs 250 stamina, mind you. So if you get like stamina drained, not really good for you. I will say, situationally speaking, that's not good. But for the most part, this is a relatively awesome skill if you pair it up with the right monster. So basically, revives. This skill you should only ever use, only ever use, and probably only ever bring this monster in situations where you can bring a reviver. Otherwise, you just straight up lose a coin, and that's dumb. People that's such a stupid reason to lose a coin just because you didn't want to set up the proper team setup. But yeah, that's how you use this skill. That's how competitively viable this skill is. It's only when you bring a reviver to bring back Rivera, and that means you can do it again. That's right, folks. When usually when you're revived by something, your cooldowns get deactivated, so you can keep doing this. You can keep bringing back Rivera, and he can keep doing this. So your revivers pretty much get 2 turns instead of 1 for the rest of the game. it's crazy. It's really 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 good. It's astronomically good. Not only does this hasten the cooldowns of your monsters, but it just gives you more things to do. I like it. It's a really good support skill, given the right comp. Um, if for some reason you're in a pinch, just do it on the attacker and do like a deny skill, and then maybe a self setup skill, and then your Sammy can just bring back your Rivera, and then your attacker goes and just wipes out. There's quite a few ways you can play it out, but just so you know, you only can ever use this skill when you have a reviver. A lot of people will probably see this as a really stupid skill, or really suicidal skill to do, or like just to ensure 2 coin victories. But no, you can get all 3 coins victory. Don't sell this move out short, because it is a really 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 dumb skill. It is a really good skill. And it doesn't seem like there's a good way to walk around it. There's an easy way to walk around the consequence. This thing seems like it has a consequence. There's no consequence to it if you use it on the right thing, you know. So use this of a reviver, and you will get results. You will get nothing but results with this skill. If you run this with a reviver on your team. Los Tres Amigos. This is the damage skill. This is the moment you've been waiting for. This whole time I've been, pushing for a patented Skull Rivera Dib the awesome damage build. This is the move. This is the thing that does it. It's a 30 damage AoE. Now that's what right there. That, like, you kind of cringe at that, Dib. This is a 30 damage AoE. Why are you recommending damage? Get into it. Deals moderate light damage to all enemies. Gives 1 extra turn to itself per. Like a cat, per successful hit. So at the beginning of the game, there are 3 monsters, my boys. If you hit every single person, you get 3 turns. Even more reason to run Sammy, who gives you a damage boost and precision. This costs 250 stamina. Okay, because you're going to be running the stamina rune on your Rivera. That's a good thing to note. Words. I think, but yeah, this gives you 3 turns in total. Only ever use this skill when you have the precision and damage boost up, because you'll get the most damage out of it. I feel like you also don't really need to do. You don't have to send the damage out right away, turn 1, but just so you know, Samuel, the metal Sammy, is probably the best Sammy to do this with. It just is. But yeah, this lets you do a lot of things. This lets you do so much things. It lets you do so many damage skills and so more setup. But anyway, you get 3 turns of damage, alright? 3 turns. Now within those 3 turns, you can do the setup skill that gives you double damage. I think it depends on the monster. Let's say you just decide to do like Demise. Let's say you just set up with Demise, right? Let's say for some reason you use Demise and not Sammy. And you just did the you just benefited from double damage by doing this skill. This becomes a 60 damage AoE at that point, so that's more than alright. You still got 3 turns. So what you do is you do Buena Oda esta skill, set yourself with double damage, and then you could go for another AoE. This is a 50 damage AoE. You've just essentially hit everyone for 110 damage at this point. You can go for the single target blind and then do the AoE again. You will have plenty of stamina to do said combo, and you'll clear board. I feel like that's a thing. You'll just clear board if you do this. This buff you get from this AoE, irrelevant. It just is. I'm now just realizing, like, if you wind up doing the evasion, that means you don't have another turn of AoE damage. So again, just more so a reason to run Sammy with this. I feel like the best partner to run my damage build is with Sammy. So with the damage build, you run Los Tres Amigos, Bueno Oda esta skill, and again, depending on who you pair it up with. I will say, if you're pairing it up with Sammy, you don't have to do this skill. You could just go for probably trait disabled if you wanted to. For for whatever reason if you feel like you just need to. I feel like with this, it does better when you just straight up kill things. To just straight up kill things. But I guess it doesn't really matter. I think I'd just run this. Honestly, I would probably run Esta skill anyway. You start the game off with Los Amigos. At the end, you probably want to do Esta skill if you haven't killed everyone. But usually the combo is Los Tres Amigos to Ataque Bien to Blindo, and then either another Chido, or you set up double damage and evasion. While you have evasion up, they can't really do any damage. And if you kill the denier at the beginning of the game, you might not even have to worry about being denied anymore, and you can just kind of go from game from there. I think running the light skill is pretty relevant, or not the light skill, the special damage skill, so just so you can hop over light tanks. I think that's pretty relevant. With the damage boost, I feel like that's enough. You do a lot of it. In all honesty, you will do a lot of AoE damage to anything that's not resistant to light. You'll just pub stomp anything not light. With this build, you run 2 damage and a stamina. Why are you running 2 damage? Because the base damage naturally is just kind of terrible. But running the 2 damage runes makes up for the fact that the base damage is low. I think that just kind of makes up for it. You will do a lot of damage with this setup. Again, it doesn't seem like you'll do a lot. 30 damage doesn't seem all that great. But keep in mind, if you're running Samuel, you're running 50% more damage. And if you did wait another turn, you will do a lot more damage because you have the special. If you actually took the time to set it up, you'll have the special weakness on the enemy team all set up. So you can go for more damage. You might not have to do double damage. You could probably get away with an X damage rune, and if you wanted to do an X speed, just so you're not lost in turn order, you just want to make sure you don't get double turned, do that. But if you run double damage rune, oh sure, you'll clean board. you will clean board, despite the low base numbers. When you have 3 turns of extra turns and you're just doing damage left and right, it doesn't matter if your base damage is just garbage. you do quite a bit of damage. You'll clean house more often than not, or just about clean house. This monster can easily clean house. I think it doesn't look like it, but I truly believe he can clean pretty much everyone on the field, except probably the light monster. And odds are you probably won't even have to face a light monster. I will say, since it is in 3 books, odds are you won't go into a light matchup. Undead and Underworld, I'd probably say the more common ones for Undead, light. You got in this category, you might maybe face another Rivera, maybe, or Regnio, or Demise. So those are the 3 possibilities for Undead in terms of. This is Underworld, isn't it? Okay, Undone. Undead. There's only one Undead monster, and that's called Rivera for light monsters. And odds are you'll probably see. You might actually see dark monsters. This isn't really too bad for undead matchups. Did I click on the right one? Undead. Oh, I still have it on the light. But yeah, there's actually a lot of dark matchups for the specific books that it's in. So it might not seem like it does a whole lot of damage up front, but this could actually be a really good damage dealer. This could be very, very good at damage. I think when I gave you guys my first opinion on it, or I was on stream, I didn't really see much into it because, again, I took time to really look into this thing, really think about it. I honestly think my build's the best way to go, or at least to make the most value off it. But this other, I think the mainstream build, you get value off it too. So with the main style of this monster, we just got done doing my damage build. Explanation, you run Sammy optimally. You can run other monsters too, but I think Sammy's the best pairing for it. And then you do, for this normal one here, you just kind of build it as a support. You could have a few rune options. You could run it the life, stamina, and speed. You could run the evasion skill. This is kind of like a stall setup. If you want to be really stally here, you could run the evasion Kalaka. You could run Trait disabled. Again, this is kind of a support. You're not really aiming for damage. Evasion, trait disabled. You got your buff skill. If he's gonna be your your buffer on your team, he's not gonna do any damage. So he's kind of looking at maybe buffing your DOT damage dealer or whatever's applying the DOTs. If it does any form of damage, this doubles that damage. So it's just better base numbers, and you get your DOT on top of that. The dark weapon Faraday is a good example of a good partner for this man. You run the Los Extra Eternos after you've killed Faraday. Odds are you might have a mirror matchup of Faraday. Run this skill, give your Faraday 2 extra turns, just kind of clean board, or just any DOT monster you're running with this man. Make sure you have a reviver. make sure you have a reviver. Or just use it on the reviver period. If you do it on the attacker, odds are you'll clean board. You don't want that. Not when he's dead. But then, yeah, you don't want that. You don't want that. But just make sure you have a reviver on you. Again, you can only ever use this when you have a reviver. But yeah, I feel like that's the main way to go. If you just want pure stall, let's say just pure stall, this wouldn't be the skill you really want. Because obviously it kills the monster. You don't want Rivera dead. You want 3 coins, right? You don't want him dead because this is a very situational skill. This is a really good skill, but it's extremely situational. If you don't want this to be an extremely situational tank support, run the spammable blind. I think that's a good way to go. It's a good substitute. Daze is kind of meh. It's nice to do like reduced damage and 25% less accuracy, but I'd rather pick up the blind. I'd rather pick up the blind. Did they take the damage reduction? This only shows 25% less accuracy now. Maybe they just took away power decrease. I don't really know. I feel like this should do damage decrease, but again, I just pick up the blind. Blind's better. Just do that. For whatever reason, if you are fighting a Faraday matchup, you could go Anticipation Hater, I'd suppose. But no, that'd be dumb. Don't do it, because you're already running trait disabled. So just run. Yeah, this is the support setup. You run the Esta skill, the trait disabled, and the evasion, and depending on what you're gonna run him with, if you want him to be extremely situational, run Turnos. If you don't want him to be extremely situational, run the spammable blind. In fact, the blind would help more in just DOT comps that's not relying on a reviver. But if you are, in all honesty, I think in terms of the best reviving comp, you probably run Sammy. A lot of just running Sammy with this thing is really, really good. Because Sammy does a bunch of DOT, and if you're running it with another DOT monster, that's just really good. I feel like you just win over time. You don't really need to do damage. As long as you set up with your DOTs, I feel like you're good. So, yeah, I think overall this monster is really, really great with really, really specific partners. He can be really, really decent as a support tank on his own if you build him as such. Again, using this on whatever is just going to lose you a coin. You need to be really specific with your partners, specifically revivers. You can build him just naturally tanky, just naturally stalling. I think this is a really good stall monster, despite not actually having any healing or shielding. This guy does lack all in any form of healing and shielding. All he really does is prevent damage, which can be really good in the sense you don't really need to heal if you're not taking any damage at all. He does have the ability to hold Tenacity Shield and or the Healing Shield that just got released, with a Healing Amulet. So he does have built-in Relic Healing, so that's really nice. He doesn't necessarily have a skill, but he does have built-in Relic Healing, so that's pretty good. That's better than nothing. But yeah, I think he can do pretty good as... Like, for the mainstream, odds are people are going to run him as tank. But I think you should take my build into consideration. I don't think it's a crazy idea. It's a really, if anything, it's a really ingenuitive and competitive idea. I think it's good. It's probably something I'm going to do with the monster. I feel like it'd be really good at damage dealing. I wouldn't mind running that. In fact, I think it's really good. You gotta also consider the book set it in, odds are you'll probably face a dark monster on defense, and you'll probably wipe board with it. So it doesn't sound too crazy of an idea. Try it out. If you're finding a lot of wins with it, be sure to thank me for the idea. But yeah, that's all you need to know about Skull Rivera. Overall, I can see this as a successful monster in competitive play. I'm Dib the Awesome. Catch you guys later.